Correspondence from not just individuals but large organizations. The one that I was able to read over today was volume, stage, and here. Okay. Closer. So we had left side attached, which was the kind of fact sheet, and some of those organizations on the bottom will now watch BCA contact us. Support more specifically, we received correspondence from BC SPCA recently. BC Nature was, I think, the last one that came in. I heard there was going to be someone from the public, a UBC student. I don't know if they're going to speak after or not, but they said they were willing to speak. Garden City Conservation Society and Fur Bearers, and they listed that they have a number of 127 supporters in Richmond. Part of that group. So the reason I brought this, or came to my attention, first of all, is just in the last month, the District of North Vancouver and the District of Saanich on the island came forward with very similar motions to the one I brought forward. I customized a little bit. Some of them had originally brought forward a motion that did not say the term city-owned land, but it's not in our jurisdiction to override what people do in their property when it comes to rodent control. Slightly different when it comes to cosmetic pesticide, which is similar but different situation. And so some of the things that brought this to me in more urgent nature is well, for one is I have a young child who likes to put lots of things in their mouth, and seeing the numbers of American children that get poisoned each year from this exact product is quite alarming. I couldn't find Canadian statistics on it. And then recently being at a new house and realizing that the previous owners must have just kind of tossed bags of rat poison everywhere because I've been digging some up. I've also been aware of a property where they had a small mouse infestation in the house, but as a result of contacting the rodent control company, they ended up putting like a dozen or more traps outside, all throughout the inside of the house. And even after the problem's gone, the control company was like, "Oh no, keep them out there. I'll keep filling them up with this toxic compound to keep." Again, poisoning the outdoor world when the problem was indoors. Clearly, what the public and what the city needs to do is not the cheapest and quickest option, but it's the more long-term lasting effect where we prevent the food and access to shelter. Just like if you didn't want to get mosquito bites or sunburn, you'd put the physical block up, right? So just a couple other things to note in here. So there are other alternatives available on the market, and this is an innovative industry. So there's a number of things that I think our staff could look into, us trying on city-owned land and recommending for non-city-owned land to kind of follow suit. One of the big concerns I have is the Richmond School District, which owns a lot of land in the city, and from my experience, whenever there's a pest infestation, I've talked to some of the crews who come in, and some of them have even said, "Oh, they come up through the sewer line into courtyards or where there's drains. That's actually the access point in for a lot of these rats, and they multiply down there, and then come in, and then all the district does is hire a contractor to put out these toxic compounds again." So I think we need to do far better for the children, for the future, and definitely for the wildlife. I won't read anything off of the fact sheet because it was, I think, very comprehensive. There was just one other part is around having sustainably focused pest management companies. And right now I'm aware, and maybe staff can clarify, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it's the Vancouver Coastal Health Authority
is the company who we contract rather to supply the means to deal with rodent infestations if they are to occur. So I'll leave that as a question to staff, but I wholeheartedly feel this is the direction that city needs to take to get further action necessary from the province and the federal government. But typically the province will be the large jurisdiction that'll bring about a wider range of effects. So yeah, thank you.
All right, now I'll go to some speakers, but I just want to emphasize that the motion that is on the agenda and the reference materials talks about on public lands. It's not applicable to the houses and the homes in our jurisdiction. And if speakers go through it, my suggestion, if you think that there's a future in it, I think that it needs to be referred to staff, because I think we don't have any Richmond-specific information. We need to know what its impacts in Richmond are, of the current situation and the updated situation. We need to know where it is. We need to know the costs that are involved. We need to know the consequences. All of that we need from a Richmond point of view, none of which we have at this point. So I think that if you want to support something, I think we should send it to staff and get some analysis. Michael, your mic is still on. So I've got Councillor McNulty, Councillor Steeves, Councillor McPhail to start. Bill?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'm going to be supporting it. I think it's a step in the right direction, as we banned certain pesticides not too long ago, and on it, and only helps us with the environment and what have you. But I do think we need to have some facts. Councillor Wilf just mentioned the school board. I was not aware of the school board, et cetera, et cetera. We need to have our partners involved. I'd like to ask staff, at least get some data, is how often have we been using this, and where do we put it out in the community on public property, et cetera. I think we need to know that. The other thing is there was a suggestion in terms of other products. Well, I think we need to educate people and have a list of other products that are suitable and available, get rid of any rodents or whatever that are undesirable. And the question would be, would we ban the sale of this as well within the community? Because I'm leading down the road. A number of Councillor Steeves will hopefully back me up on this. Many years ago, again, I'm going historically, we banned the sale of Rideout in Richmond, for example, and we don't use it anymore, and it's not for sale on the shelves, etc. If you go to neighboring municipalities, it is on the shelves. They have not banned it, but we have. So I think we need to look at that as well, to add to this, to do a complete analysis of the whole thing, and go from there. So I agree with everything in principle. I believe we need to tighten up a couple of these resolutions and go on from there. And I think a referral could be in order and to be brought back as soon as possible, so we can get on with it, because I'm hearing from a number of residents, given who are growing gardens and what have you, and have fruit trees and those things, that there is a rat epidemic within the community, and whether they're using those kinds of things, I hope they're using traps instead. But I hope people will not let us ban traps, because that's the only other way to go about it, and probably the best and humane way to deal with rodents. So I'll be supporting it, your worship, in terms of a referral, but maybe we can hear from staff as speakers go along to answer some of our questions, and especially some that were already, some comments are already proposed. Okay, thank you.
I just want to remind everyone, we're not talking about private property. We're talking about this use on city property. So it's not for private property, it's not for school board property, it's not for the property held by anybody else. It's simply on public property. Harold, Councillor Steves.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to suggest we have an amendment then that we include school board property and private property in the referral. Because the real danger is what's happening on private property. And if you just walk down the sidewalk beside City Hall, the school board has rat poison traps right beside the school board building. So obviously they've got rat problems right beside City Hall. And I've seen rats at City Hall out in front of it running around. So we've got a rat problem too. So I think that we need to be looking at both city property, school board property, and particularly private property. The reason that people are complaining about the rats is especially with all the changes going on, whenever a house is boarded up and sits for a month or two, rats are attracted. We had 3 houses knocked down in our neighborhood over the last 2 or 3 months. And if you recall, I raised it a few months ago. One of them was boarded up, and we told the person to knock it down and said, whatever you do, don't put out poison. But everybody was complaining about the rat infestation. Well, right after it was knocked down, the rats that were in that house moved around the neighborhood. The next thing we know, we had a rat person going door to door, asking people to pay to have rat poisons put out in their yards, which I found quite shocking, and I told them to get lost. But and there are alternatives, and we have been desperately trying to keep barn owls alive on our farm for decades. We've had resident barn owls. Every once in a while, somebody puts rat poison out in the neighborhood. They hunt rats for a whole maybe 2 kilometers from where they are. We worked with the Richmond Nature Park, a fellow named Rick Kenny, can give you information on terms of how to build an owl house, or even put one in the eaves of your house, which we have. And if you do that, then you're not going to have rats, but they'll clean out the neighbor's rats as well. But if somebody poisons your owl, then you're going to have more rats. Our owl just left me this gift a couple of days ago. This is a rat pellet that the owl eats the rat and digests most of it, and then chokes up the skin and the fur, and it looks like a green cucumber. Our resident owl left that in our upper porch about 2 days ago. But when we see that, we know he's doing his job, because they eat 3 or 4 rats a night. And when you have a whole family of owls in one place, you're getting rid of a lot of rats in your neighborhood. We should have rat houses at City Hall. But I would hope that we will, in the referral, we'll find ways. I think we should be asking the province to actually ban these poisons on city property, on residential properties as well. We did that with the cosmetic pesticides. The only exemption was farmland. Under the Right to Farm Act, they can use pesticides on their farm crops, but even farmers can't use Roundup on their front lawn. They can only use it on where they're farming. And I think we need that kind of legislation for the poisons that we're putting out, these rodenticides as well. Save the owls. We had one owl die about 2 years ago. I've got some pictures of it. It was not very pretty. It was as skinny as a rail, because they die an agonizing death. And then finally they just die, but they get skinnier and skinnier, and they can't even fly, and then they die. Not very pretty. So I certainly support the resolution, but I hope we do expand it to private properties and school board properties.
All right, Linda, Councillor McPhail, and Bill, your hand is still up.
Sorry.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I like the idea of a referral to get more information. For example, what do we do? Do we use anticoagulant rodenticides in the city right now? I don't know that. And, before we consider canceling or modifying the rodent control contract with Vancouver Coastal Health, what do they actually do? We have it on our website under urban wildlife. For common pest species not included are rats and house mice. And then, for rodent issues, contact environmental health, Richmond Health Services. And I've directed people to that. And, Vancouver Coastal Health does come out. They speak with the homeowner. They put traps, and they monitor the traps, and they take the traps away. But I don't know if they use these products in the traps, so I think we just need a little bit more information. So I would support a referral. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Green.
Thanks kindly. I support the resolution. I think it's pretty straightforward. I did have some questions of staff though. With respect to the discussion about owls as natural rodent control, do we have owl boxes in the city outside of like the nature park?
Through the chair to Councillor Green, we do have owl boxes set up in certain areas, private property. So in some cases, particularly the one that I'm thinking of beside the Walmart town line development, we have negotiated to the bat boxes in around multifamily developments, in addition to the Terra Nova places as well.
So we have the bat, sorry, did I say bat box or did I say owl box?
Owl box.
Oh, okay. So because we've done owl boxes or bat boxes, we're a bat friendly community, but do we have the equivalents kind of programmed for owls?
Through the chair to Councillor Green, we do. We look for every opportunity. We work with the nature park at the parks for opportunities for owl boxes, and then through multifamily developments, we also look for opportunities to either enhance or improve old field habitat or install owl boxes as a part of the ecological network management strategy initiatives.
If we're able to get some more information on how many owl boxes we have and how successful we've been, I'd love to be able to see that in a memo. That might be something that we want to look at as complementary to changing any rodent program. We might also want to consider having that discussion with the school board because they do have a lot of open land that typically includes at least one stand of trees. And then further, I do think that we need to include the school district on this. Like that's just, it's a no-brainer. It's public property that they would want to perhaps consider doing similar. The rat number for Coastal Health does drop off rat poison. You can see their boxes through the neighborhood. They're very happy to come and drop them off, but it's not helpful for the ecosystem. So I'm supportive of making some changes. Thank you.
Councillor Howe?
Certainly, I think this is the right thing to do. Yeah, we should ban the use of poisons to kill rats or other animals. And so I support the referral, but I would ask the question that should we be more comprehensive in our referral in the sense that we are not just talking about public properties or school board properties. I think perhaps we should also consider the private lands. I understand that we may not have the jurisdiction right away, but I think if we are going to do a study, I would rather have a comprehensive study, and staff may come back with a proposal that may take a number of years to implement in stages. So I think instead of just doing the public properties for now and then leave the private properties for the future, that would be something we can consider as a package rather than a piecemeal. So I would support referral, but I would also ask for a more comprehensive study.
I think the motion, whether we pass it today or whether we pass it at a future date, really contemplates that because we talk about providing direction to staff to implement a ban of anticoagulant rodenticides in the city of Richmond on city-owned land, updating our existing bylaws. But number two, request we write to the Premier, appropriate ministers, copying MLA, etc., requesting that the province of BC ban anticoagulant rodenticide. So that is, I think, the later stage of something we can do right away. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too will be supporting this going to referral at least. I think we need a little bit more information. I also support the banning anticoagulants. I know that it's a terrible way to die for animals. That's why as a kid, we're always careful about things like antifreeze and that kind of thing because it's basically the same stuff and it's a terrible death for any kind of animal. I'm wondering if we are going to have the conversation with Vancouver Coastal Health and understanding what they're using and why they're using it. If we are going to move forward with this and ban it, it seems to me that we need some data on where we are now with rats and if we have any data on the owls and everything else, but also if we can partner with Vancouver Coastal Health over this, because if instead of just changing providers, if we can change how they operate, I think it makes more sense. If it's just us doing something little in the middle of Richmond, and everybody around us is still using all these products, we're only making a tiny dent in what's happening. If we actually want to turn the dial here, I think we need to partner with Vancouver Coastal Health. We have to share our data. We have to make it far more understandable and a more robust program. So if we're going to move forward with it, we have to bring them along the journey with us and share what we're doing and why we're doing it and help change how they're doing things across the municipalities. And then I'd also like to refer this to school board liaison. So it's more than just sharing this. I think we need to refer it to the actual meeting, and then it formally moves through the process.
All right, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I will support the referral because I think there's more that we need to know about this. I mean, we will very likely end up at exactly the same place after we get information back from staff. And I think we will be writing a letter to the province. But what I'm concerned with is we do have a rat problem. So if we're going to stop using these these awful pesticides, that's good. But how are we going to get rid of the rats? And maybe owl boxes are the way to go, or maybe there's something else that we can do, trapping them or whatever. At any rate, I will be supporting the referral. Thank you.
Now, Councillor Wolf, you had something more?
Yes, very, very briefly. I will not be supporting the referral. I brought this in a somewhat urgent matter because if we do not enforce the ban and work on the contract negotiations and all that, then things get delayed. As we just received our referral packages, some things have been in there for 7+ years, and I don't want one more child to get sick, one more dog or cat to die, or one more member of the wildlife team out there to be injured. And I think the wording allows for that to happen by going ahead today, because it talks about communicating with residents and businesses. It talks about considering the canceling or modifying the contract with Vancouver Coastal. It doesn't say you have to stop it tomorrow. And even in number 1, it talks about staff to implement a ban. It doesn't have to be an overnight ban, but ideally sooner the better. But I think referring this back to staff is going to be too, whenever it comes is good, but it'll be too late for too many lives.
All right. So it sounds like the majority of council support a referral. I think staff has heard the various points that have been made. Chad, if you agree with that, nod your head. Chad, yes. But particularly, we're talking about jurisdiction. Now, the materials that are that have been given to us talk about the fact that we can only deal with public property, not private property. So talk about the jurisdictional limits. Can we go to private property? Secondly, the partners. There's been a lot of discussion about the school board. My guess is that they would be quite willing to be a partner in this, but they should be consulted, and it could be quite complicated when you've got council, city land and school board land, which is basically mixed up together. But also you'd want to make sure that we're dealing with Vancouver Coastal Health and any other stakeholder or partner that we would have. Aside from that, we've talked about, the cost and the consequence and et cetera. So I'll make a motion that we refer this to staff for further analysis and report back. Second. And that's seconded. Anything further on the referral? All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillor Wolf and Councillor Steeves opposed. Okay, that brings us to the landfill application, the soil fill. For this one, just a minute, I want to check. Mr. Sidhu, are they both here? Okay. We'll hear from staff on this, and then we have Mr. Sidhu, the applicant, is here to either present or to answer questions. And an engineer named Dr. Stephen Ramsey is also with us, and I'm not just sure of his connection to it. So we'll go to Carly Williams. Do you want to give us a bit of a background on this?
Hello, I have nothing to add to this item.
Okay, maybe you could give us a very brief synopsis of it then.
Okay, the application in front of committee today is by Mr. Sadhu to place peat on his property that he is already operating as a cranberry farm, but it's just further expansion of his operations. The area in question is not capable of supporting the cranberry farm, so he has suggested to source out about 60 centimeters of peat to spread over the area. It will take, Mr. Sadhu can give more details. He has looked at some sites, I believe in Queensborough, but as detailed in the report, sourcing materials such as peat can take longer and is more expensive than the other soil deposit permits that council has considered in recent history. But again, I'm happy to answer questions about the city's process and the requirements that have been met by this application, and the applicant himself can also take council's questions.
All right, so as I understand it from your report, contrary to previous applications where they get considerable dumping fees, because it's peat soil and they want the peat soil and only peat soil, they don't get paid for it. Am I correct on that?
That's correct. There is not the same market. Mm-hmm.
All right, we've got Councillor Green and Councillor Wolf so far. Oh, just a minute. Just hold on a second. Hold on. I just want any questions of staff. Okay, you've got questions of staff? Councillor Green?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, have we ever had a peat fill application before? I've never heard of one.
Through the chair to Councillor Green, we haven't had one in recent memory. Not sure that I can say ever.
Okay, why is it that it has to be peat? Because I read the report and it said it needed organic amendment. Why is compost not suitable?
I believe for that question, it'd be better to ask the professionals or Mr. Sadhu himself.
Councillor Wolf.
Yes, thank you. I have a few questions for staff now. So the Queensborough site that is going to be the source of peat at the beginning here, it does say in the report that that site is undergoing development or will soon be. I'm curious, does staff know if that peat that currently won't have a tipping fee, if that development gets moving and they need it off there quicker, will there then be a tipping fee added to it?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I don't know, but maybe the owner can answer. We do rely on the agrologist to confirm the source sites.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. My next question for staff then is around, because this is on River Road, and in the report it mentions that there's a size limit, a 9 ton, I think. So do we just waive the impact that's going to have on the road? And also, I didn't see anything here about how they're going to enter and exit the site, because other spots on River Road have markers up so vehicles don't come out and go blind the other corner.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, they will have to have a traffic management plan when it comes time when they're ready to have a permit issued. That is one thing that we look at. In terms of roads, you talked about the vehicles on the roads. The vehicles are allowed to use those roads, but only for the direct route. They're not allowed to use the roads to transport through the area, but they can use those roads to come into the site. But again, once they, as part of the traffic management plan, we would make sure that everything, their route is designated.
And will their staging area for trucks be on the property and not backing up onto the narrow River Road?
That's correct. That'd be a part of their requirement of their traffic management plan.
Great. And then next question for staff is related to the decommissioning of the potential decommissioning of the Kinder Morgan pipeline. That's at the north boundary of this property. Was that the latest that we heard from them? Is that they're not going to remove the pipeline? They're just going to decommission it and leave it buried in the ground? Is that the latest we've heard?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I can't comment on the Kinder Morgan pipeline. The only thing I can comment in is, as is in the report, because of that adjacency, it's a requirement of the property owner to make sure there's permission. I can't comment on exactly what's happening with that.
Okay. My final question relates to the security bonds, which is on page 17, the summary of the previous ones.
Mm-hmm.
So you gave the 4 previously approved similar situations. Like Councillor Green asked about peat soils, do we know if any of these 4 were involved, had peat soil involvement?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, none of those involve peat.
Okay, that's all my questions for that staff. Thank you.
All right, so we'll now allow Mr. Sidhu to come into the meeting. And is it just Mr. Sidhu at this point? Just Mr. Sidhu. Just a minute, are they both there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Guys,
we gotta. What's that?
No.
We'll just work from this phone here.
Now, my understanding is that Mr. Sidhu and Mr. Ramsey are both here. So, Mr. Sidhu, you're the applicant, and what would you like to tell us?
I'll give you a little bit of history of my farm here. My parents been farming here since the 60s, and we've always been a blueberry and cranberry farmers. And when I finished my education in 1978, I came back here to the farm part-time, and then '83 I started full-time farming, and we had developed most of the farm into the cranberry farm. But there's just a little piece that was left that we just couldn't finish. Financially, we couldn't finish it at the time, but I think we're in a position we can plant it now.
All right. All right. Now we'll go to Mr. Ramsey. Stephen Ramsey, are you there?
I am, yes.
Now, could you introduce yourself? Tell us how you're a part of this application, or are you a member of the public?
No, I'm a professional that has written reports in support of this application. I'm a professional engineer. I specialize in these kinds of projects which involve geotechnical water management issues of one kind or another. I'll also indicate that I am also going to try to speak to the issues that might be within the scope of Jessica's responsibility. She was the Madrone consultant. She is busy dealing with a personal family matter right now. But I was the author of the summary report, which encompassed my work and hers, so I can speak to a fairly wide range of issues. I submitted 2 reports, one which dealt with geotechnical issues arising from the proposed soil placement on the property, and a report which dealt with water management issues related to the application.
All right, so we've got your reports. Is there anything you want to highlight, or we'll just open up for any questions?
I don't think there's anything in particular that has not been dealt with either in the reporting or in our previous meeting. The summary report, which we put together, which summarizes the geotechnical, the water management, and the soil issues, I think speaks to all of the substantive issues here. And further to Mr. Sidhu's comments, we're talking about the completion of a farm development plan, which has gone on for a very long time. We're talking about 15% of the overall area. The remaining 85% has been actively farmed for many, many years. And in fact, some of the preparation work for this particular area was done under previous permits and authorizations between about 1990 and the very early part of the 2000s. So essentially, there's only one step that remains here. I guess there's two steps. One is to complete some of the cleaning up of the land, preparation of the dikes, etc., and installation of drainage. And then the substance of this is the placement of 0.6 meters of peat soil, which is specifically for the cultivation of the cranberries.
All right, we'll go to questions. And I've got Councillor Day, Councillor Green, Councillor Wolf. This is just for questions of either of the two delegations. Councillor Day. All right, we'll go to Councillor Green.
Thank you. My question is of the applicant. The application says that the site requires organic amendment. Why would we not consider then adding compost or similar materials rather than peat?
We are doing peat farming now. The part adjacent to it is peat, so we have to be very consistent with the same material.
Sorry, the last word I heard was consistent.
Yes, with the previous soil that we have our next piece to it.
Okay, I guess my concern is we're looking at 32,000 meters cubed of peat. I don't know if you're aware that peat is twice as much of a carbon sink as forest, and so digging up peat is the equivalent of a carbon bomb. Would you consider other ways of amending your property?
Most of East Richmond is all peat. I could consider it, but I don't think I'm capable of farming something with a brand new soil because I don't know how to farm it.
Okay, thank you.
We'll go to Councillor Wolf.
Councillor Day's mic is on if you want to
Councillor
go first.
Wolf.
Okay.
Councillor Wolf.
Okay. I have just a couple of questions for both who are on the call there. So I first I applaud you for being a long-term farm family and finding ways to use what's on the land and in the location you have. So first off, to Mr. Sadu, the pipeline that runs to the north edge of the property, are you able to continue your long-term vision if that pipeline remains buried and decommissioned, as well as if it's dug up and removed? Are you okay with either?
Yes, we don't have any problem with that. We with the pipeline, we leave a buffer for the pipeline. Okay. And so we have a 30-meter buffer between the pipeline and the property. We do that between the pipeline and ourselves. They don't tell you what we should do or not, but for our safety, we try to do that.
Great. And also just so that some of the work that you're going to do doesn't get undone if they're having to go in there. So just make sure you give that full buffer. And I think council is going to be working to ensure that the safest option for long term is taken. So thank you for being accommodating for both those potential options. Also, you highlighted the Queensboro site, and I applaud you for sticking with peat because that's the kind of foundational material of breaking down plant material that's good for plants like cranberry that have historically grown in peat soils. But do you happen to know that source that you're getting it from? You did, or I think it was mentioned that in the report that it is going to be developed. Is there a 2-year window that you can get that peat? Or is their window going to be tighter than that? And they're going to need to force it off quicker.
It could take up to 2 years. I'm just saying that because with this COVID, we don't know what kind of development is going to happen.
Okay, great. Thank you for being set up for there. My last question to the agrologist then. We've had similar applications, and they actually listed the same issues that this property had around nutrient poor and excessive water. How will you ensure that this specific parcel, the one that's going to get the fill, how do you ensure that the water that does come on it gets off? Because it is harmful to cranberries to be submerged in water all year round, like it says in the report. So is it just the perimeter drainage canals that will be dug inside the perimeter road, and that will drain into the River Road Canal and then or ditch and then out. Is it as simple as that, or will there be operating pumps? Can you just give a little bit of detail on how this operation is going to deal with excessive water? Thank you.
There's several points I'd like to make about that. One is that the area which is now being developed is approximately 50% of the total area of the property, and the remaining 85%, as I've mentioned, has been in continuous cultivation for many years. The elevation of the remaining piece is the highest of 4, and the water management is actually in a cascaded fashion from the high down to the lowest level, and that in particular during harvesting allows conservation of the water that's being used. Because the largest piece of proper or largest section, which comprises about 40% of the whole property, is really the governing or controlling piece of it. That we don't have any particular concerns about handling water smaller area above this. In terms of the actual details of the drainage, first of all, each field is entirely contained within dikes at the edge, which in part, of course, are related to the harvesting process. There is a perimeter ditch which collects water so that it can be transported away. And there is also a drainage pipe which is installed in the fields in order to control the drainage of water from inside the cultivated area.
I appreciate that answer. Thanks.
All right, Councillor Steves.
Thanks. I'd just like to make a comment, and then I've got a question. My comment is this is a very unusual request. I don't believe it has ever happened before, and I'm pleased to see that someone is actually looking at improving the peat soils by adding real peat. Organic soils would not work. Quite often the organic materials that you find in compost is full of sand and other materials that eventually break down and they don't act the same way as peat. So to build up a cranberry field, he has to find a source of peat. And so I want to congratulate him for trying to do that. The question I've got, however, is that the consultant's report says there may be rocks in the peat material. And I'm just wondering where the rocks came from, because peaty soils generally are very deep. And I know when peat is mined out, it isn't as deep as it was before it was mined, and most of the peat lands in the lower mainland have been mined out. But what is the source of rocks? Is that gravel roads or something put down on it, or why would there be rocks in the peat?
You're right. There should be no rocks in the peat, but sometimes we end up getting rocks from the site or somewhere. But we pull everything out. We don't let it bury it or that, because it's wherever the rocks are, the field settles different, and we have a hard time trying to get the level of water in it. But so we remove everything that comes out. There might be the odd stump coming in, but we try to tell them at the site to keep it from coming here.
Yeah,
okay, that's good. So effectively, rocks is something that's been got there by mistake somewhere along the line in the past on the soil you're getting.
Right.
Yeah. I'd just add to the geotechnical perspective, because obviously I'm a geotechnical engineer, that you're absolutely correct, that there is no way that rock could be incorporated within the normal depth of a peat deposit. So it has to arise as a result of some contamination. And the Madrone report makes it clear that there'll be control exercised both at the source and at the ultimate destination of this material to make sure that they are not having materials which are not consistent with the requirement for the peat soil. We're not getting any materials which are deleterious.
Okay, that said, would you mind, and I'm making this suggestion to the city, that the city take, I'd say, a very serious look at this as it progresses, because I think this is a good example of what we should be seeing in other other peatlands in Richmond and wherever there is peat. Instead of filling the peat in with clay soils, I think this is an excellent proposal, and we should be monitoring it and working with you to see how it's going to work out. I congratulate you for it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Harold, you still got your hand up? Councillor Day.
Thank you for that. Sorry about that technical glitch earlier. I'm also very happy to see this happening. I think it's time that we try to make better use of...
No. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Where will the peat come from, and how can we ensure it won't be contaminated?
We're going to try to stick with the Queensborough or New Westminster area and East Richmond. And when we do get the material in, we're going to ask for letters from the people that this has no contaminants, and it's proper peat that we take. And then I have to look at the peat to make sure it's going to grow what I want to grow in it.
So will you be screening it?
No, shouldn't be need to be screened. But what we do is we have equipment that goes through it, and if there's any stumps in it or if there's any material that we can't use, we take it out.
Wow. Well, thank you for your hard work and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
All right. So those are all the questions and comments of the delegation. So we will excuse the delegations on the phone. Does someone want to move the motion? So that's moved and seconded. We've had a lot of comments. Anything further from anybody? I'm not seeing anything. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried with Councillor Green opposed. That moves us to the Ubcm Community Excellence Award. Someone want to move that? That's moved and seconded. Mr. Keena, did you have anything to add to your report?
Nothing further to add, Your Worship. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Anybody got any questions? All right. Let's call the question. All those in favor?
Question
any
here.
Opposed?
Question here.
Who? Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Real quick, under the fourth one, which is the Excellence in Sustainability Mitchell Island Environmental Stewardship Initiatives, I'm just curious, has there been any further updates to that project? I remember we got a memo on it a while back, but it does include measurable improvements to discharge water quality. Do we have what's the most recent one, or can we include even more before we apply? I just want to be the best report or application going forward.
Jason,
yes,
can you answer that?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I'm going to pass that on to sustainability, and sustainability will be able to answer the question for you.
Okay, Chad.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, right now we are in the middle of writing an application to FCM for some funding as per a report taken last time to council and endorsed. We will be reinitiating the existing sampling parameters, so we're starting that up again. Right now, there's nothing more that we would want to add or could really add to that, other than that the program is still ongoing. So the next real big step is the feasibility study for improvements out there with hopefully what is going to be some federal funding through FCM.
Thank you. Could you just remind me how frequently is the measuring being done for that water quality effluent? Is it a monthly, a one-off?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, it was at times it was weekly when things were issues were found. So we have different sampling points throughout the island. Again, depending on the frequency of hits or exceedances, it could be bi-weekly, but mostly it was weekly during the rainy season, and that was part of the program.
Okay, keep up the good work. Good luck. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, I'll call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. No one opposed. Michael, your hand is still up. All right. So that brings us to the TransLink Capital Cost Share Program Supplemental Application. Fred Lynn, are you there? Or Lloyd or somebody?
Your Worship, I'm here.
Is there anything you want to add to your report?
Yes, Your Worship. Just want to add that TransLink has issued its final approval of all the projects noted in the report. with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, someone want to move it? So it's moved and seconded. Comments, questions? Councillor Green? Councillor Liu? Go ahead.
Thanks. I was just wondering if staff can speak a little bit about whether we can expect more projects to be coming up. I was kind of expecting to see bus priority lanes because they've been talked about a lot. Is that something that's coming up?
Through your worship to Councillor Green, yes, we are working with TransLink on future projects to be considered as part of the upcoming bus speed and reliability program. Just to clarify, one of the projects that we are recommending today does include a bus-only lane that is on Stevenson Highway just before the overpass.
Thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question to staff. In conjunction with the 5 and Steveston work that's being done, is there any way that the 2 bus stops near Seaward Gate can be addressed? Because the buses sit there for long periods of time, creating a lot of backup. And I think if they were moved to the other side of Shell Road, or if some other option was investigated and looked into, I think it would help that situation a lot in that whole area.
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, yes, we, through the detailed design phase of the project, will be bringing that forward to TransLink for consideration.
Thank you.
Councillor Day.
My question is more about the process. So is it the mayor's council that makes the recommendations to TransLink? Is that correct?
Yes, and I just happen to be the co-chair of the Joint Finance and Governance Committee. So I expect this to come forward. And if I could further address your question, I don't know where they're getting the money from, frankly, but we remain positive. So go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good tidbit. I hope they can find the money. I got to tell you, I was out in the valley and I bought gas at $1.13, and I came back to Richmond and it was like $1.25. I mean, we better be getting something for our money. It's very concerning that we pay so much more, and I'm sure that the TransLink have a big pot of money. My question though is, so if the mayor's council makes the recommendation, I mean, does each individual council, i.e. Richmond, Delta, Burnaby, have the ability to direct their representative, likely the mayor, to work for them? Like how does the hierarchy work, and how can this council be more proactive?
I think it goes the other way is the answer, is that the kind of the overall program will be supported, and then there's direction to work with the cities. So it's really coming from the cities. You can't do it without the city's cooperation and support in one way or the other.
Okay, good. Just anything that we can do to, I mean, you know, like Councillor Liu just made a point about one issue, and I mean, we all have ideas of how we can improve TransLink, and I just would like councillors to be have the ability to be more proactive. Thank you.
It may not be on this specific program, but there are materials going to a meeting on Wednesday, and I will circulate what I can. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Au?
Yes, I just have a quick question. On GP 133, the very last paragraph, staff talk about a review of number 0 from Cook Road to Stevenson Highway. And then further in the next page, the top, it talks, the second line, talks about a similar analysis and review of the northern section of number 0 between Cook and River Road is anticipated. So can staff talk more about that? So what's the anticipation? So when do you think that kind of review of the northern part of number 0 could be done?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, the northern section is being reviewed as part of the Rapid Transit R7 project. What TransLink has indicated to staff is that project is on hold for the time being. The project that the southern portion, that one is being considered through the bus speed and reliability program, so it's a separate program.
So we don't have any idea when that hole up will be released on the northern part of the number 2 road.
Through your worship to Councillor Au, there were technical work that were being done before COVID hit, and our understanding from TransLink staff is that they are putting the project on hold for the time being.
Okay, where's my list? I think that's all I've got.
Recommendation.
Yes. No, it's already on the floor, thanks. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed to that? So that's carried. Brings us to the number 5 road. Wayne Craig, Nathan Andrews. Do you want to tell us anything about it?
Nothing further to add, Your Worship. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Let's see. Councillor Green.
I just have a question of staff about why can't it be townhouses? Because it's we've done a good job of densifying that stretch, and then we're putting in not townhouses.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Green, in terms of the Arterial Road redevelopment strategy, this site is identified for compact lot duplexes. That recommendation and land use designation is based on the existing geometry of these lots, as well as the rear lane access. Townhouse development is supported further to the south of this subject site where the lot depths increase. And that is the primary reason, is the lot depths are deeper to the south.
Thank you, I understand now.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Thank you, Worship. I just have a question to staff and maybe to our legal. We always get, we've got a numbered company applying for this again, and we never know who the developer is. So I'm just wondering, is there a process by which the city can ask for the developer's name? And it also goes when we see an architect or an architectural firm applying for it. Who's actually behind this? Is this something we can ask for? And maybe Tony can help us out from a legal point of view.
Through Your Worship to Councillor McNulty, in terms of applications, anytime the application is made on behalf of a company, we do require proof of signing authority in terms of who that company is responsible for. If the company is not the registered owner of the property, we do require a letter of authorization from the property owner. In terms of identifying who the principals of the numbered company or any company are, I'm sure that information can be included should that be council's desire.
Your Worship to Councillor McNulty, that is correct, what Wayne described as a request.
I guess my question, Your Worship, I think it'd be worthwhile that we include both when we put it in from a numbered company. For example, we've had one where IBI Architects applied for, but we have no idea who the developer is, etc. And if we had any concerns, how would I end up finding out who the principal persons were on this? So I'd put it forward to Planning Committee, but we're not going to have it for a while. But it becomes city policy. They put the numbered company and the principals behind it are applying for permission. Could we make that a matter of course and policy in the city?
I'm sure staff is hearing you. On this particular case, Tony or Wayne, could we just have a company search and just give us a memo as to the principals? Or at least you can find out the directors and officers of this company.
Yes, Your Worship.
And when we have the future applications, we include it. I would even make that as a motion to include policy and staff look at it as policy.
Can we just give I think we've given direction to staff. I take it under
advisement, and if I'm not happy, I'll bring it up in a formal motion.
Yeah.
We can take that under advisement.
Thank you.
Councillor Day.
Much, I would absolutely support a motion to require a name on every single application. I think Councillor McNulty is 100% right. My question is, there's a map on page 155 that shows kind of a jut out in the back of the property where the lane gets wider just for this property. And then it says on GP 158 that there's going to be one tandem parking per unit. I don't understand why we couldn't avoid tandem parking in this application because of the width of that lane. I happen to live in the area. I walk down that lane all the time, and that's where cars are parked.
Wayne?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, in terms of the oddity on page 155, that extra piece is lane owned by the city. It would form part of the driveway aprons for the subject site. In terms of the tandem parking arrangements, the lot is just not deep enough or wide enough, I should say, to have a non-tandem arrangement. So each duplex will have access to a single car garage with an additional ability to park a vehicle on the driveway apron in front of the garage.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with this area. I know the lots are a little bit narrower there. I think if they built a smaller house, they'd have more room for adequate parking. There's no parking really on number 5 road for half the day because of the restrictions. So I would not support this based on the tandem parking, but I would be prepared to make an amendment that it not have tandem parking.
All right, Councillor Wolf. Bill, your hand's still up. Carol, your hand's still up.
All right, thank you. My question through the chair of staff relates to that back little extension on the property as well, where 2 trees will be removed. And then it's basically just a carbon copy of what the developer is asking for. We're just extending it onto city land there. And I would think that as Councillor Day acknowledges, that there's a lot more space in this part of the lane, that if the vehicles coming out of the south property, if they could, instead of having a nice straight paved section to come out on, they have to make a slight turn to the right when they come out, we'd be able to create a small grove of trees and put up an owl box and other features on city-owned land. So is there any way that that can still be adjusted or not?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, the design of that portion of the site will be done as part of the servicing agreement for the site. Should the rezoning proceed, there would be ample time through the development permit and the servicing agreement to look at landscaping within that lane. The landscaping will be determined in consultation with city parks and engineering departments.
Okay, I look forward to the results of that. Thanks so much.
All right, may I have a motion? So it's moved and seconded. Further discussion on this? All right, let's call the question then. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillor Day opposed. And by the way, I just want to, before we go to the next one, on the name of the applicant, I just want to remind people, the name that you get could be quite deceptive. I mean, I don't mean that in an underhanded way, but if you find who the name of the company and who's behind the company that's developing it, they could have 100 different investors, and that's not going to be, that very likely won't show up. So putting a name on there is only going to take you so far. So we'll go to the Stevenson Hotel. Wayne Craig, Cynthia Lucier, anything to add to your report?
Your worship and committee members, I have nothing further to add, but I just wanted to highlight a few points, if I may. So the proposed heritage alteration permit application to enable roof replacement is necessary to extend the physical life of the Stevenson Hotel. And the grant request associated with this maintenance project is consistent with the Heritage Conservation Grant Program outlined in Council Policy 5900. Further conservation work to maintain the building will occur incrementally in the future. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we have a question from Councillor Green.
Thank you. I'm in support of the assistance with the roof on the building, but I was just looking at GP 203, and the building we have today and the building that was there look completely different. The building from the archives from 1920 is quite beautiful, and I'm looking at what we have right now, and it's just a rectangular block. Are we going to be helping them with any facade improvements or restoration so that it is more to the original character? Because it's quite sad.
What, Wayne, Cynthia? Wayne or Cynthia?
Through the chair, Councillor Green, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So the work that was done to the Steveston Hotel previously over the years was all done prior to the establishment of the Steveston Conservation Program. Such that the work that's been done recently under the heritage alteration permits have not altered the original characters of the building, because so much historic work was done since it used to look like it did in 1920. In terms of restoring the building, we will be meeting with the applicant and the owner to come up with a conservation plan for the building in order to determine what kind of work can be done incrementally for maintenance purposes, and then what they can do over the long term to restore the character of the building.
Okay, so to be clear, the scope of that discussion is how to make it look more like 1920 than somebody playing crickets.
Continue, please.
To be more like 1920 versus whatever happened in the 70s?
Through the chair to Councillor Green, so the restoration work would be done as part of a conservation plan prepared by heritage professionals. So they would likely seek to restore as many parts of the building as possible to what it used to look like.
Okay, good. I mean, I would be over the moon if at some point it could look original. It was exquisite. I had no idea. So,
okay.
But thank you for the ongoing work.
Councillor Steves.
I just wanted to comment briefly. This again is another real plus today. We had a grant program. We set it up, goodness knows, 30 or 40 years ago. When Heroes Grocery was knocked down, we offered $100,000 to the people just to keep the facade, and they wouldn't take it. So it's quite a change in points of view of some of the merchants in Steveston now that they're coming forward and asking for grants to do restoration. So I think just doing the roof is a great first step, and it shows that the owners are interested in maintaining the building. So I think that's a real plus. And hopefully someday they'll see fit to do a restoration to make it to beautify it the way it was before the facade was changed. But certainly this is a step in the right direction.
All right. Anyone else? Just a minute. I thought I saw someone. All right. May I have a motion then? So that's moved and seconded. Further comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Supply of Hydrovac Services. Ben Diaz, anything to add?
On to item 6?
Yeah, we missed one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've skipped over one. Yeah. So that was Steveston Hotel. All right. So we've got live streaming. Claudia, what do you want to tell us about?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have nothing further to add, but can certainly answer questions. If you'd like me to provide a brief overview of the report?
No. No, we've all read the report, and people will have comments. It seems to me that the direction we should be giving in the COVID times is to keep meeting out in city council chambers. We should have live streaming of the council and the committee like we still do now, like we do now. Expand that to the school board, council school board liaison, and to the development permit panel. And then for post-COVID, chances are we're going to be using the Anderson room, so staff should be getting that up to speed to meet whatever requirements we have. But we decide on the post-COVID situation, I suggest we just wait until later and we'll work it out. But I think everything I've said is pretty much what we have talked about in previous meetings. So I have Councillor Day, Councillor Steves, Councillor Green.
Thank you very much, Mark Brody. That was pretty much what I wanted to talk about. It says following the pandemic, we may restore to our original program, but it also says on GP 220 that additional improvements would be required in the Anderson room in order to live stream and have video. I wonder, is that in the budget or is that something we need to get the ball rolling on? Because once we are post pandemic, I think we want to keep up the good work that we're doing now.
We'll ask staff about that, but if I can just reflect, we need the technical requirements for a room. We need that to be brought up to standard. It's very close, but it's got to be right up there. We're talking about in council chambers, if you saw the picture of the Coquitlam Council, where they actually have plexiglass dividers between the various councillors, that's enabled them to have personal meetings, in-person meetings. Whether or not we would go that far and to devise something like that for safety reasons in the Anderson room is quite a bit up in the air at this point, I would suggest. So I'll ask staff, first of all, if you agree with what I said and anything you want to add.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Day. In terms of the potential upgrades that would be required to the Anderson room post-COVID, if Council were to direct staff to live stream the meetings, we would need to explore requirements such as the installation of cameras and would certainly have to report back to Council on that. In the interim, post-COVID, the WebEx platform could still be utilized to enable the live streaming until a permanent solution is determined.
I think we should get the ball rolling on this, and I'd be prepared to move that we direct staff to work on implementing the potential changes required for the technical improvements to allow for cameras in the Anderson room.
We're going to get to that in due course, but I think that's what we're contemplating. Councillor Steves.
My concern is similar to Councillor Day. I'm not that enthusiastic about the plastic walls. And the reason for that is the virus, and it's finally becoming public, but I've known it well, actually, I've known it since I took biology something like 30 or 40 years ago, that viruses, when they get airborne, can drift around anything. And so the idea of putting plastic barriers in, I find it may make people feel better, but I don't think it does very much use unless somebody's got the virus and they're coughing right at you. So I just wanted to make that comment. I think, however, on the news today, it looks like there's a vaccine that certainly in the UK they're testing it out, and we may only have to put up with this till this time next year. So I think we need to adopt what we've got here today and then see what happens.
Councillor Green?
Agree with having our meetings continue to be online and streamed. I think that's great. With the school district city liaison committee, I think we need to bring that to be ratified by the whole group, though, because the school district. Okay, and then I am interested in having this electronic availability in the long term for residents. I have heard from folks that they're tuning in a lot more than they used to because it's on YouTube. Do we have streaming numbers? Like, do we know how many people are checking in with us?
Claudia?
For your worship to Councillor Green, I don't have the current viewing statistics, but we can certainly look into that and in a memo and provide that information.
If you could give us a memo on that.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to know if we've got more engagement. That's always a good thing. Thanks.
The numbers that I've seen now, they're a number of weeks old, are pretty small, but maybe they are growing. Anybody else? All right, so let's go back to what I said here and see if we've got agreement on this. That we give staff direction. Number one, this is for COVID times, call it. During the COVID situation, A, that we'll keep meeting in city council chambers for all the meetings. B, that we will continue to live stream council and all committee meetings, standing committees is what I'm saying, as well as the council school board liaison meeting subject to the approval of the school district, as well as live streaming the development permit panel. That, again, during COVID times, staff is directed to enable us to have meetings eventually post-COVID in the Anderson room. And then number two, post-COVID, we will make decisions in due course regarding these matters. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's moved and seconded. Anybody want to comment on any of that? I think that's consistent. Carol?
Without making a motion to actually implement the changes needed for the technical and video on the Anderson room, now is the time to get the work done while no one's using that room. So I think that rather than say we'll make that decision later, I think we should make that decision now.
I believe that was my direction, that we said during COVID times, we're getting the Anderson room up to speed. If it wasn't part of my motion, if it was, Claudia is nodding, so that was part of my motion.
All right, okay, as long as it's in the works.
Yeah, Councillor McNulty?
Worship, I'll be supporting that, but I'd like to know if we could have a memo what it's going to cost and what we're spending on it. Getting sound and videos and cameras is not exactly cheap these days, and I'd also like to know what budget it comes out of. Because I know councillors will support the budget.
Well, let's add that on as a specific item, is that staff advise us as to the budgetary implications.
And also what it would cost to do the council chambers if in like Coquitlam, if indeed we decided to go that route. Yep.
Yes, including the changes in the council chambers and the Anderson room, for that matter.
I support the euphoria around the table, but also, you know, we're in a pandemic, and obviously our incomes, we need to know where we're going to put our monies. Okay, thank you.
Yep. No question about that. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. So now to the item that I thought we were at, the Hydrovac Services, Ben Diaz. Ben, anything to add to your report?
Nothing further to add this time, Your Worship.
Move the recommendation.
So that's moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'm not seeing anyone with their hand up. All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay. Library Cultural Center mechanical upgrade. Norm Connolly and Martin Yaunis.
Your Worship, and committee members, staff have nothing further to add to the report, and we're open to answer any questions you might have.
Well, let me start it off with a question, because the recommendation is for option 1. Am I missing something? It seems like when you compare option 1 and option 2 has a far higher cost, but the environmental performance is far better. Have I got that right?
That is correct from the perspective of those two parameters on this project. Staff have been looking very closely at this, and with the aid of consultants, and looking at the trying to resolve basically over the past year and a bit significant cost escalations, and trying to square that with the anticipated benefit of greenhouse gas emission reduction. I'd also invite Mr. Yunus to comment on that further.
Your Worship, that is correct. Your comment is correct. It has more environmental benefit, but the cost associated with it is very high. Hence, we came back to council, to committee, to inform them on the status of the project, where we are, how much money is required to achieve that reduction in GHG emissions, or because the equipment and the facility needs to be replaced, we need a decision so we can either replace like for like, or ask council for more money and then complete the retrofit.
All right. I've got a number of speakers. I've got Councillor Liu, Councillor Day, Green, Wolf, and Steves at this point. So let's start off with that list. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question to staff. It seems to me we have a pricing for GHG and carbon emissions. So if we look at how much we would save in carbon emissions versus what we price it at, or what we sell ours at currently, or what we buy it at, isn't that a fairly straightforward calculation? And then we can say, well, we could save it somewhere else, or we could pay somebody else to save it because they're far more efficient at it and we buy the difference, or this is a far more economical way of getting that GHG savings, and we should for sure go with it. Can we
through the chair to Councillor Liu. Yeah, just in terms of looking at squaring that difference between cost and benefit on this project, we looked at what you could refer to as the implied cost of carbon for avoided emissions, and we reached out to BC Hydro on similar retrofit projects to get a sense of what a kind of an average per ton amount would be on avoided greenhouse gas emissions, and what BC Hydro had landed on without any incentives or grant funding, just sort of the pure capital cost was about $340 per ton. And then we looked at our project here under the retrofit option, and it landed at about $440 per ton of avoided emissions. So reasonably higher than sort of a benchmarking average on that. And when you add in all the costs in this project, that per ton cost quickly rose to about $1,204 per ton. So.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So you know what I'm saying? Like when we look at it that way versus say, we know we have an ice rink that needs a retrofit coming up, and we know that ice rinks are GHG pigs, that, you know, fixing one of those things up, we'll get far more bang for our buck and a way bigger environmental differential. So it seems to me that if we can state it in this kind of way, it gives us a better understanding versus just kind of trying to eyeball these bar graphs. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Day.
Mayor Brody. Okay, so my question on this is kind of simple. What is the longevity of the Library Cultural Center building, and would we want to spend any more than necessary at this time? I mean, it does have a shelf life.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the Library Cultural Center as a building is in good condition. Spending this money to perform the deep retrofit would add benefit to our corporate strategy, because we do have a strategy of reduction of GHG emissions. And for the investment. If you're asking about the longevity of the facility itself, it is worth the investment because it will be in place for a while back. We have taken care of this building, and it will be in place for the foreseeable, for the next 15 to 20 years. So yes, if that to answer your question.
Okay, so just to be clear, you think we've got 15 to 20 more years of life in that building?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Green.
Thanks very much. I have a couple questions of staff. One is I'm wondering where a sustainability staff person is. Would we not be speaking to them now about a deep retrofit?
Through the chair to Councillor Green, we have staff here from both sustainability and district energy as well as project development. Did you want to address something specifically to our corporate energy manager?
Well, it's with respect to the outstanding seat, right? Because we have set down that we're going to reduce our GHGs by 30% by 2030, and we're going to be net zero by 2050. And so if we're putting in equipment that is expected to have a longevity beyond the, say, 2030, we'd be pretty suspect to be able to go ahead with something that doesn't incorporate a reduction in GHGs.
Through the chair to Councillor Green, that is correct. That the direction has been laid out both in our community energy emissions plan, or our current plan, as well as in our corporate energy and emissions plan, the plan for our civic buildings. So very much so, greenhouse gas emission reductions are prioritized in those. Where the challenge is in terms of resolving the cost per ton and actually the capital cost of the two retrofit options on this particular project.
So you just need direction from council. It just was that staff isn't comfortable coming to council with an ask to do the thing that's in the SEEP.
Through the chair to Councillor Green, that is correct. We're looking for direction because of the state of the mechanical systems in the building and because some equipment is already in failure mode. So we need to respond either way amongst these two options.
And then option two, what's the longevity of that equipment?
Through the chair to Councillor Green, depending on the type of equipment, it's in the 15 to 25 years, but most new equipment now is 25 years of operation we could expect to have.
So 25 years is great, and it puts us way past 2020. I think we need to go with option two. Thank you.
Okay, just so you know, I've got Councillor Wolf, Councillor Steeves, Councillor Au, and Councillor McPhail. Councillor Wolf?
Yes, thank you. When I read this report and seeing that the staff acknowledged that it's 1.1 of Council's strategic plan that comes up, the continued leadership in addressing climate change and promoting circular economic principles. And then I find option one is what's recommended. I see a big disconnect there. Another factor I don't think was mentioned yet was to forego capital grant funding by taking option one. Again, I don't see the benefit of us having some funding come from elsewhere. And I think with our continued leadership and our success with Ubcm awards and awards from all over the world, us to not continue with our leadership on one of our civic buildings, that's one of our pride sites, and to hear the lifespan of it, and then the lifespan of the equipment, it seems to me this one's a no-brainer to go with option two. And although costs are high per ton, I feel that with the addition of potential more grant funding, that would be a bonus to that. But other than that, there's no. The cost of a habitable planet is not really negotiable for me here. So if we clearly have option two that sets us at 60% GHG reduction. Oh yeah, I'm 100% for that one, and quite opposed to option one. Thanks.
Councillor Steeves.
Yeah, I was reading this, what option two entails, aside from the top-notch replacement equipment. But what are we looking at in terms of our power source and things like that in terms of reducing our power needs? And I mean, are we going to put some solar rooftops on and geothermal and things like that? It seems to me that we should be looking at all those options.
Through the chair to Councillor Steeves, the costing in the study was, and the comparators were done with a mechanical upgrade only, no addition of renewables. The idea in option 2, which is the more significant retrofit of the mechanical equipment, it basically involves a fuel switch from largely natural gas-based heating systems to a electric-based heating system. And because of our low-carbon grid in BC, that yields a decarbonization step for that building, yielding 60% overall emission reduction from the current BAU, business as usual.
Okay, that leads to my next question then, because that's what I assumed what we were doing. I don't know if you saw or not, but there was news yesterday that they're anticipating a 40% increase in the price of natural gas in the near future. So I think that the savings could be substantially more than what we've got in this report if that happens and if it stays that way. But also, I think we have to look that the cost of hydro is going to go up as well. So would the building be in such, if we chose option 2, would we be able to add solar and geo and things like that at a future date?
Through the chair to Councillor Steeves, I'll refer to our corporate energy manager just to talk about rooftop potential with respect to rooftop renewables. Mrs. Sadian, would you care to respond?
Sure. To the chair, to council, we reviewed the options of installing and adding the geothermal to the building, and it was quite costly. But in the future, we are looking at connecting the building to our district energy system.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Councillor
When I read the report, I also come to the conclusion that option 2 is the better option because, the reduction of GHG is great, But I just also want staff to help me to understand, and probably the public as well. Now, when we compare the number figures, like the money figures, we know that option 2 would require $1.5 million more. So that's understandable, easy to understand. But when we compare the 10% to 60% GHG reduction, of course, staff mentioned that would equivalent to 160 tons of GHG reduction annually. But could it be also translated into some more concrete reference, such as if there's a dollar term, can we translate into how much money being saved? Or, if we talk about the how many vehicles being removed from the streets, so that, people who are not quite familiar with the topic can have a more concrete reference about the benefits of spending more money upfront, but getting some other measurable benefits in the long run. So can there be a dollar term being put, or how many cars being removed from the streets?
Staff, can you give us a comparator?
Through the chair to Councillor Al, we could do that. It's simply a conversion of, greenhouse gas emissions per ton avoided, and map that to the average, intensity of carbon from your typical vehicle, and do a comparator for sure.
Okay, why don't we ask you, if this goes through, for you to give us a memo this week? Yes?
The chair, we will do that.
Okay, I've got Councillor McPhail and Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did have a question to staff. Now, several years ago, and we were looking at the Minaroo precinct study, and I think in the Minaroo Park vision, there was discussions about this building, and if we were going to add parking to it, or up top or anything like that. So I'm just wondering, do we know where that plan is, and if anything is contemplated to this building?
Through if I may, Norm, through the chair to Councillor McPhail, we have not there's nothing that is going to happen to the building. There's no plan to add parking on top or anything else or close by. But as for the building itself, it is I want to say the center of the cultural precinct that Monroe plan, and possibly Elizabeth can add to it if there's anything that is impacted to the LCC in that area.
Because I'm supportive of option 2 for many of the reasons that have been discussed. I'm just wondering if we went ahead with option 2, did that then preclude any upgrades to the building in the future?
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, no, it will not.
All right, thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Your Worship, following on Councillor McPhail's comments with the Mineral Park vision and what we were talking about on that, I'd be supporting option 2. I think anytime we have an opportunity to replace or upgrade, we need to follow our vision and our leadership in this, Your Worship. And I think we need to have it brought out in simple terms for the public to understand in relation to what we're doing here. Climate change is a cost, but it's also an investment. And I think we got to continue investing in it as we go down the road. And this gives us an opportunity to. I'm not sure where we're going to get 1.54 million more, but I think we'll end up getting repaid down the road. And if staff could let us know when you're talking about emissions, what that cost will be, because eventually down the road, that 1.5 million will be absorbed just by what we're saving with regard to the climate change, because the long-term benefits is going to outweigh the short-term cost in this case. And I'd like to know what that is, whether it's X number of cars off the road, however you put it in terms, but we got to keep it simple and work on an educational basis for the public. So I would be happy to move, Your Worship, option 2, not option 1.
Well, just hold it a sec. We'll finish the speakers. Councillor Green, you had something further?
I thought I was last.
I do. One is a question of staff about the equipment, because I understood from when they were speaking with Councillor Steeves is that it's electrical based, and then will that be compatible with adding solar panels to either the parkade or the roof like we have for the fire hall? We could generate our own power.
Staff, didn't you say the plan was to hook it up to district energy?
Through the chair to Councillor Green and your Worship, yes, it was looked to make the mechanical system compatible for future connection to the Lulu Island Energy Company district energy system for purposes of further greenhouse gas emission reductions.
Maybe, Mr. Chair, if I could add, alternatively, renewable technologies like GeoExchange could be connected to the facility. So ultimately, the city has many options for how it provides renewable energy for the facility.
Okay, thank you. I was hoping for that clarification. And then for any councillors that are interested, Natural Resources Canada has a greenhouse gas equivalency calculator.
Councillor Day, did you have something more? Or is that from a previous time?
No, what I'm questioning is, it says that the option 2, the additional cost is $1.54 million, but it also says on GP 232 that there would be $1,075,000 coming from Capital Building Infrastructure Reserve and another almost $500,000 from the gas tax provision. So are we kind of temporarily lending the money? Like it's practically already in the budget and there's money coming back. So why would we not go for the extra expense? Like, is that not true?
Staff, can you answer that, or do we need to go to finance?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, Mr. Yunus, did you want to comment on that piece there?
Through the costs that are mentioned, through the chair to Councillor Day, the costs that are mention how much money we actually require additional. What it is mentioning is that we will borrow this money in the sense of until we find a place to get the 1.54. The question was, where do we get the 1.54 million at this time? we are giving options. Finance provided us with options where we can get the money, where we can allocate this money and then pay it back. But we don't actually have the money. We need to actually increase the budget by 1.5.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
All right, so I think the motion, based on what people have said, is that instead of that the conventional equipment replacement described as option 1, it would be that the equipment renewal and GHG reduction project as described in option 2 on page 4, etc., be approved. So we want to move that? So that's moved and seconded. Further comments? Anybody? All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Carry with Councillor Liu opposed. All right, that brings us to the last item on the open agenda. We have the estimated cost for the temporary road changes in Steveston Village for August 2020. Speaker is Lloyd B., but I think Katie Furland also wanted to speak to this. Just to remind everybody, we've decided to close off the roads and change them around, put it that way, for the long weekend at the beginning of August. We had the motion as to whether we should do this for all of August, which was defeated. And so we have the additional information that you have in front of you from Lloyd B. regarding what it would cost for all of August. What it would cost for August 1st to 3rd and what it would cost for all of August. So who wants to speak to this, Lloyd or Katie?
Your Worship, I'm
Lloyd,
happy to...
Hang on. Lloyd, anything to
add?
Your Worship, I have nothing to add. I'm here to answer your questions.
All right, Katie.
Your Worship, I'm happy to summarize the information provided to Council in the memo this afternoon, if that would be helpful.
Well, given that we got it just so recently, probably that is a good idea. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So following Council's decision last Monday to implement those temporary road changes in Steveston on BC Day long weekend, staff conducted further outreach to area merchants to advise them of the change and also to seek their feedback and input regarding the possibility of extending those changes beyond August 3rd. Per Council's direction at that meeting, we also included in our discussions with businesses the reference to the desire to help businesses with economic recovery, as well as the public health recommendations to create more space on streets. So from July 15th, last Wednesday, to today, July 20th, we reached out to all 102 businesses that are fronting Bayview Street and Moncton Street, and we heard back from 82 of them, which represents an 80% response rate. The results of that polling and that engagement was that 43% of the businesses consulted were in favor of extending the approved road changes beyond August 3rd. The majority of businesses consulted, however, 49% of them were opposed to extending those changes. 9% of the businesses consulted declined to provide a response. Some were indefinitely closed and others were unreachable after multiple attempts. So since early June, there have been multiple efforts to engage Steveston merchants to provide feedback on planned or proposed changes to the street network in Steveston Village. And although this most recent attempt does yield a larger sample size, the results were largely the same. There is no clear consensus from the merchants on the need or desire to extend the temporary street changes, and the majority are opposed to that occurring. Ultimately, the wide variety of the feedback and the responses that we received reflects the different types of businesses operating in the village and their unique needs. But throughout that process, per Council's direction, the Economic Development Office used that as an opportunity to reach out and establish communication with many additional businesses in the village, and we'll continue to work with them to hear their feedback and work with them on various economic response and recovery initiatives. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, so I've got Councillors McNulty, Day, Steves, McPhail. Bill, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. It didn't surprise me on the results coming back. I was disappointed, but it didn't surprise me. I have a question of Mr. B. The traffic control personnel, the 27,000, Are these our people that are working, that would work, or laid off people or exempt staff?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, these are our public works people.
Aren't some of them already working?
Through your worship to
Councillor, already working. We haven't laid them off already. They're working. They've just traded shifts.
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, Ben Diaz is with us here today from Public Works, and he'd be able to answer that better than I can.
I'd like that answered, that we're giving opportunities to our people to work, and we haven't got any layoffs in the work chart, have we?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, you're correct. We don't have any layoffs in the work yard. There was a handful of people that took the voluntary leave as far as the option with the COVID pandemic, but there has been no layoffs in the work yard.
So why do we have the additional 27,000? If is this overtime for some of them?
Again, Councillor McNulty, yes, this would be overtime depending on if it's on the weekend or outside of regular working hours.
Given and this, I throw this to George, given what I saw them do the last time down there and what they were responsible for, I know they're supposed to have traffic control training, but couldn't we bring back some of our auxiliaries as well to work on this to get further employment to some people that are suffering?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, that's certainly something that we could look at, whether or not there's the need. I'm not sure if our auxiliaries would have the training and so on, but most certainly it's something that we can take a look at.
Well, I would maintain from the training I saw down there that didn't require a heck of a lot. And what we're using at the work yard, I would think that we could train some people very quickly. No, I'm in favor of doing what we can to Steveston and others, but basically the merchants have told us basically do nothing. I just have another question, Your Worship, on a bigger picture. Maybe Katie can answer this. Have we offered this courtesy to have expansion and opportunities for sidewalks and stuff extended to any other business sector in Richmond?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, yes, the temporary patio program is available to any business throughout Richmond that has access to either private property or on-street sidewalk property that they could use to expand their operation. We have 9 applications that have been approved to date, and 5 of them are outside of Steveston Village.
That's very well. Good job. Well done. I like to see that happening. But we're focused. I know what today's issue is focusing on Steveston, but I'm very encouraged to see that other businesses have tried to take advantage of what we're trying to do. So I guess, and thank you for the most comprehensive report. We need to keep this on file. It's something I said before. We can't get consensus down there. I've gone door to door down there, talked to business owners, go to one, go to the other, and you get contrary information, etc. So obviously it's in, but we've got to try to, this is for them to try to do something. And obviously some want it, some don't. And I'm not sure what direction we can go now other than to accept this for information. Thank you.
Councillor Day.
So thank you very much for the options. Is there a hybrid I feel that we should only close Moncton on the weekends because that's when a majority of people show up there. Is there a hybrid model between like 2 and 3 to not, to leave it open on the weekdays?
To your worship to Councillor Day, we haven't listed an option like that, but we could do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, I've been down there during the week. It's not that busy, but the weekends, that's a whole other story. So I think we need an option 4. Thank you.
Well, all we have to have we can pass a motion. We know what we're doing on the weekend, the BC holiday, at the beginning of August. So if you want to do something, you can make a motion that you do that every weekend or something like that. I mean, there's endless numbers of options.
Agreed, but we would need to have cost on that.
Well, we have the costs for the 3 days, so I think you've got a kind of the order of magnitude. What would it be for 2 days, Lloyd? Just off the cuff, 20,000.
Your worship, I would just divide the traffic control by 3 times 2. So yeah, it'd be about 2/3 of the traffic control that's listed there, and the setup and takedown would be pretty similar.
Okay. Councillor Steves.
Thanks. I walked into Steveston today, and I just want to relay something that I saw. The new building that's at 3rd Avenue and Chatham Street that was just constructed. There's a lane to the north of it, a brand new lane, and I walked down the lane, and we blocked the lane off so you can't drive through it. And it's very simple. We have a huge yellow concrete block and a huge checkerboard sign there. If you tried to drive around it, you'd end up going down a grassy lane to get to the next piece of roadway. And what I can't understand is why can't we do that exactly along Moncton Street? And I'm looking at option 2 in the back, which is the $32,500 deal. Not have people there other than the first few days directing traffic, and simply block it halfway across the street, put pylons along the street where people drive, and put big signs up saying one way only. And that checkerboard sign, I'm sure, is enough to deter anybody from driving it. And a concrete block it should be enough to deterring anybody just smashing their car in it. Now, you simply can't drive over one of those things. And if you try to drive around it, you would be in the wrong lane. I just don't see why we can't do that and go for option 2 on the last page there of one-way streets each way. And that way it would be a bit of a compromise instead of closing the whole street off. The other thing I'd like to say is, while the business community is divided, a little bit more opposed than in favor, the public is really, really in favor. And a lot of people are saying we simply won't go there unless they close the streets off, and I'm one of them. And I think that Steveston right now has so much to offer with the waterfront and activities down there that the public from all over Richmond and even the Lower Mainland wants to go there. One of my daughters once called me up and said, "What's happening at Steveston? I want to come down for a visit when something's happening down there." And that's what people are looking at. And if we're able to close the Moncton Street off even half as a one-way street, I think we'll provide a staycation for a lot of people, and the business community won't regret it, and the public will certainly support it.
Okay, Linda.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank staff for the direct reach out they did to the businesses, and I'm not surprised about the results. It just seems that whatever we are going to do or whatever we contemplate, there's going to be winners and losers. And I agree with Councillor Steves. I like option 2, and I think the thing about that is that if it's there for a month, people are going to know. And I think that's what the Victoria model was. They're doing it for several months, but they had quite a head start. They started in June and they're going to October. But then you have that certainty. Businesses know that they have so many days. They can either hire more staff to have their patios or whatever. And I have a question, Your Worship, through you to staff. Bayview really seems to be the issue. As Councillor Day said, Moncton really isn't that busy during the week. But on the weekends, it does get busy. But Bayview seems to be the one that is kind of busy all the time. People want to go to the waterfront. They want to go to the boardwalk. Have you thought of any other ideas, say, just for Bayview?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor McPhail, I think previously we presented some options which were just one way on Bayview by itself. We can certainly do that.
All right, but I would be amenable to option 2. Thank you.
And just to clarify, option 2 or option 1, 2, or 3, that's contemplating the whole month, right, Lloyd?
Correct, Your Worship. That's the entire month outside of the long weekend. It starts after we conclude the,
Probably till Labor Day?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Green.
Thank you very much. I've had the opportunity to talk to some businesses, and their feedback is do it or don't do it, but don't do it halfway, because they can't have any benefit from that. There's benefits to both ways for them, but there's no benefit for doing it half-assed. So I think we need to just look at the fact that 43 to 49 is hardly a consensus on merchants. And I'd also like to point out that those roads are public, as it's been spoken to before, that those roads don't belong to the businesses. They actually belong to the whole city, every resident here. So while we do want to consider them and get their feedback and mitigate any issues, we also want to know that we are looking after everybody. And I think that that really speaks very much to the fact that we're in a pandemic. And the whole reason we're talking about this is because we need to give people space, and we need to give them space all the time and have certainty that every day is going to be the same and not be surprised about what's going to happen tomorrow. Now, at 3:15 today, Bonnie Henry had her latest briefing, and the three takeaways from reporter Richard Zesman from CBC is that there's three takeaways. One, we are no longer flattening the curve. Two, explosive growth could be coming. And three, it is all in our hands. So we can work with merchants to mitigate any issues. They're totally all fixable. We need to be respectful of the fact that we are responsible for the safety of everybody in this city. And what we need to do is what's been directed by Bonnie Henry, fewer faces in bigger places. And we're not doing that. We're not. So I'd like to make sure that we are doing the best that we can for people that are trying to be safe outside. And that means that when we're simultaneously having a tourism program that's driving people to come to Steveston, I've checked with friends in other cities. These ads have been running in the Vancouver Sun, the Burnaby paper, the New West paper, all the municipalities, the North Van, okay? They're all getting advertisements saying, come to Steveston. That's serious. So let's do it right. Let's do the proper closures of the streets so that pedestrians can have space. We're going to open it up for everybody that's not bringing their vehicle. That's a lot of people. And there's lots of parking down there. How many spots are in Steveston? Staff?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Green, I don't have that at my fingertips right at this moment, but there are quite a few parking spots. The parking spots on Moncton don't represent anywhere near the majority.
Yeah, thank you very kindly. I appreciate that. From previous discussions, it's been over 1,000 spots in Steveston, and I've personally walked around. There's parking everywhere. Parking's not an issue. What we need is we need space. We need space for people, and we need them to be safe. It's a pandemic. I will be moving for an option that involves the Steveston, the Canada Day configuration for the month of August.
All right, I've got Councillor Wolf, Councillor Al, and Bill and Carol, your hands are still up. Councillor Wolf.
Great. Turn this fan off here. Thank you very much. I just have a couple things to follow up that weren't asked yet. One is about signage. So I was speaking with some people from Victoria and looking at the vicnews.ca pictures of Government Street, which is what they now call a one-lane, one-way pedestrian priority trail. And the residents that I've spoke to that were in that area just last weekend found it, well, they were on their bikes, but they found it not to be as congested as they had previously seen it their last time there. And there wasn't a lot of staff people around. They were looking at signage and interpreting kind of what to do based on the signage there. So my first question as staff is, are we looking more at needing staff there for the beginning and then seeing how signage can cover some of that need, or is it quite consistent all the way through August? And what what exactly would the typical staff day be like when they're there? Is there no signage beside them, or are they there to move barricades to allow deliveries to access those hard to get to areas? What's in there, Mandy?
Lloyd,
through your worship, yeah, absolutely. Through your worship to Councillor Wolf. There's a couple of things that they're doing. One is that if we do get an enormous number of people that are walking down Moncton Street, we're concerned that those people, like, they may be continuously crossing the avenues and will have a conflict with automobiles, and maybe at some point in time someone will get aggressive, and maybe someone will get hurt. So that's one thing that we want to watch for sure. The others are, you hit one right on the head. We need to help people with deliveries. When we take away this street space, deliveries are an issue for all of the businesses out there. So the staff will be helping people find places and ways to coordinate their delivery processes. And one of the other pieces is that the way that the Steveston set up doesn't really help us too much on 3rd Avenue. Where the Save on Foods driveway is creates some issues for people trying to figure that out. We definitely need people to direct people what to do when they kind of get to a dead end there in the Moncton closure situation, and help them turn around and get back out. So there's a number of things that the traffic control staff have to achieve to make the Moncton closure work.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and having priority towards safety is paramount for sure. And as a previous guest service coordinator when I worked at the airport, directing people because they got things on their mind, or they're toting a kid, they might not see that extra lane that they have to watch for. So thank you for that. The next question is again back to signage. Will this be enrolled with large signage campaigns? So if we were to go with one way Moncton, one way Bayview, would there be overhead signs as well? Like beside the traffic light, I would say one way. And then also, is there a signage campaign that will be part of this program that would also go to direct people who are heading towards the wharf or are bypassing Bayview by just staying on the south side sidewalk and going straight to the wharf? How will they be informed about what the proper distancing and maybe direction to walk and all that? Will that be part of this or no?
Listen, to move this along, my suggestion is whatever we pass in this coming week, we would get a memo from staff talking about the signage plan, based on whatever we decide.
Okay, thank you. Well, just one more follow-up then. I know we can have special council meetings anytime throughout August, and I think we're likely to have them more than not this time around. My question to staff would be to initiate a full Labor Day weekend shutdown, just to get that out there now. Would that be pretty much consistent with the BC Day weekend shutdown, those 3 days? So would we be able to kind of just tack that on today, just so it doesn't require us to come back to do it? Because clearly it's going to be needed. It's going to be busy down there. Could we not just add on the end of August and then the up to Labor Day Monday?
That will depend on the motion that is made, and we will clarify that point.
Okay, then I'll just clarify Councillor Green's question about parking. I remember staff quoted 1,111. That was the number of parking spots in Steveston that I thought I heard. And as a result, I'll hear what the rest of the discussion is. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Au.
Okay, different options before us. You can do nothing, or we can make a permanent change. But I think I also understand the fact that we have to do the right thing. But this is not such a clean black and white matter. And I think sometimes you have to do something for over a period of time in order to see the effect. So that's why instead of having random arrangements here, there, over the month of August, I would support option 2, which is closing. I mean, not closing, but one way for Moncton and Bayview for the whole month of August. I think for doing that over the month of August, we can see the effect, and everybody would have a better idea for the impact. So instead of doing random things, I would rather say that let's do option 2 for the whole month.
All right, thank you. Let's go back to Councillor Steves. Councillor Steves, I think you wanted to make a motion for option 2, which has generated a lot of discussion here.
So I'd like to move option 2, but I would like to suggest we need some way of meeting or determining what happens at the beginning of September, if there's a way we can continue it. So maybe if we adopt option 2, we can get a staff report back on that. Would we need a special meeting if we wanted to extend it through September?
Now, well, we can talk about extending through September in due course, but I just want to clarify your motion. Are you moving that right through the Labor Day weekend?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And not beyond that, but what if we decided we wanted to go beyond that? We need to figure out how we would make a further decision if we wanted to. Certainly it should be till
I'll second that.
Just before we get to a second, may I suggest, okay, so you're moving option 2 to go from August 4th to Labor Day, to and including Labor Day. Secondly, we would need information, let's see now, a clarification of the specific costs, if we could get that this week, as well as the source of funding and the signage plan. Does that make sense, Harold? Can you move that?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. Okay. Discussion on the motion. Then Councillor Day. Let's not repeat what we've already said. Okay.
No, I just want to be clear. Are we saying that we're going to do the shutdown just for the weekends or for the entire month, for the entire thing?
The motion is the entire month.
For only the weekends or the whole month for sure?
The entire month. Every day, the entire month.
Thanks.
Councillor Green.
I'm not in favor of option 2. We need to do option 1, which is the Canada Day program. The businesses have said that they don't want us to do. The businesses I've talked to really don't want a partway job. They don't want it. They can't take advantage of it, and so there's no upside. And I'd also like to point out that, there's, I think that we have to also take into account the fact that there are people walking around. There's psychology behind that. They're not all going to decide that instead of walking on the south side of the road, they're going to walk on the north or vice versa. Like, you need to have room on both sides of the road, because there's businesses and things to do on both sides of the road, not just one. And that's one of the things that I have a problem with on Bayview, is that when we make Bayview one way, it's just more room on the south, but the north side of that road is busy, right? It's not that the lane goes through the middle and you've got extra room on both the north side and the south side. It's just that the south side has more room. Like, we have to take into account that those are people and that they have things that they're doing, and they're not all going to just go in the direction that we tell them to go. They have things that are going on. Anyway, I'm more in favor of option 2. I'll move option 1.
No, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. Will we have? Can we make sure we have some staff point person that businesses can talk to? So if they're having a problem, they've got an issue, they've got somebody they can talk to, that they can feel that they're getting heard, understood, and possibly even get some resolution if they're having a problem, especially if it's over the weekend, so that they're not like trying to phone somebody, oh, they're on vacation, getting shuffled around. Like, if we're going to go through with one of these options, any of these options, I think, I support option 2. I think it's a great plan to start. But we also heard from some of the businesses that they didn't want it. So they have to have some way of having that communication with city staff.
Yeah, through your worship, yeah.
That can be part of the signage plan, right?
Your Worship, absolutely it can. And then I want to point out that on the Canada Day shutdown, we did give the all of the merchants an email and a phone number that they could get an actual person that could solve their problem on that day. And we will continue to do that for the rest of this process, whatever council chooses.
Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Just a very brief add-on here. So I will be supporting option 2 that's on the floor here. I do really would like to ask, like, maybe it's a friendly amendment or not, but for Labor Day weekend, if that could be full closure of Moncton again, because then it would be consistent as we did on Canada Day and BC Day long weekend. And typically, if people need to move out, if their business is closed up, they won't be moving out during the month, and by the end of the month they'll be out. And so
that's not friendly. That's not the motion.
Okay, then I will not make that friendly adjustment. Thanks.
All right, let's call the question then. All those in favor? Those opposed? It is carried with Councillor Green opposed. All right, I think if I can find an agenda. I don't know where it's gone.
Yes,
here I've got it. I've got it. Come to the rescue. Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Okay.